Hello, I'm Lorianne LaRocco, and welcome to State of Freight. Joining me now is Greg Hewitt. He is CEO of DHL Express for the U.S. Greg, thanks so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Lorianne.
What are you seeing in terms of orders as we go into peak season for the summertime?
Well, I guess for me in the express business, my peak comes a little bit later than the forwarding peak season, which will happen in the around mid-year. Our peak tends to be after U.S. Thanksgiving through the end of the year and into Chinese New Year. What we are hearing from our customers is that they are expecting, I guess, a more normalized peak after the last two have been somewhat diminished. I think in my business, we saw e-commerce, business to consumer business, continue to have strong peak seasons the last 2 years. But our traditional industry segments, things like automotive, engineering and manufacturing, high tech, they were down. And so the overall number was flat to down. We're hearing that maybe that orders are a little bit higher, that there is going to be a little bit higher demand. Maybe some people are starting to worry again around, is there going to be the space to make sure everything flows and is smooth for the supply chain? So we're gearing up with that in mind for this peak season.
When you're talking about concerns as it relates to space, what are the concerns that they're worried about? Are there specific routes?
Not specific routes. I think people are just still remembering that during the pandemic, when there wasn't enough space in terms of air and ocean capacity, people got very nervous that they couldn't fulfill orders and that their supply chain had challenges. We, of course, in Express running a fixed network, did well during it because we had capacity and capability. We were able to flex up and move things smoothly. As people having 2 years of maybe a downturn during peak, when people start to hear, hey, it's going to come back, there's questions on, is there going to be enough air capacity? Is there going to be enough ocean capacity? What do we need to do to make sure we've got space? On my end, it means we're making sure we've got the capacity that as orders flex up in November, December, and January, we've got the space to allow our customers to float up with it and that there is continuity in their supply chain. I would imagine my counterparts on our air and ocean side would be doing the same. They're already looking to secure the space to make sure they can fulfill the obligations with their customers this summer.
When you're looking at your peak season versus the traditional peak season, what are the types of items that you generally move and receive, if you will, during your peak season for the holidays?
I would say when you look at our peak season, it tends to be more rush routing. It might be items that were traditionally moved in larger quantities during the summer months and brought into inventory here in the US. What we'll see is maybe some things that there was greater demand for. Maybe it might have been some items that production lagged behind. So it's a little bit smaller orders, but it's ones they need to quickly get in either to a retail location or to a consumer direct or into their inventory in time to sell before, I'll say, the Christmas rush hits. We also tend to see whatever would be a hot commodity or maybe some of the latest trends. You think of now this world of fast fashion. What needs to get in either to satisfy the U.S. consumers who with a strong U.S. dollar are buying more online, or enterprising U.S. businesses who are bringing things in and looking to sell that on a global basis, maybe in conjunction with a product they already have on hand and in their inventory. But maybe we've had a lot of success helping small and mid-sized businesses explore where they can sell their products on a more global basis than maybe some of the traditional markets like Canada and the UK.
When you're looking at the various trade routes around the world now, I don't have to tell you the headwinds, if you will, right? You have the Red Sea, you have the Panama Canal, you have the possibility of an ILA strike. When you're looking at all this, and what happens is, and what the viewers may not realize is, logistics managers are kind of taking their bet guesstimate, if you will, right? Which route is not going to be as bad to move their product? How does that type of planning impact anything from the express side? And does that further truncate, if you will, right? The amount of flow and the availability that your clients could possibly have because they bring in their products later.
On the express side, what tends to happen when you see pinches in the supply chain in the air or on the ocean more than anything is some of the bigger movers of product who would be using those lanes also have agreements with companies like mine. And although they normally would move smaller volumes, lighter volumes, samples, maybe small production rush routes, they start to recognize that where there's a pinch, they need to move more of their supply over to us. And what they do is float up the orders with us. That does take capacity that might be available for some businesses away. But we're generally able, because we've got fixed capacity and our utilizations aren't at 100%, we can generally accommodate and float up. And then we're able with our providers to look for charters or other capacity that we can add into our network and connect through our hubs and gateways to try and manage through some of those supply chain pinch points. The hard part is the cost in the air is significantly more than the cost on ocean. So it really, for companies, comes down to, do they have enough in their margin and in their business to afford the higher cost per kilo to deliver to their and meet their orders, or do they have to wait it out or look for alternatives around that?
When you're looking at all the different headwinds, are there any headwinds that you're most concerned about?
No, none of those. We haven't. We actually had expected maybe to see more of a lift at the end of quarter one and the start of quarter two with some of the concerns that were raised around the Red Sea. We haven't seen a big increase in air freight. Maybe that's companies stepping back and saying, we don't need to move that inventory quite that fast. We can wait and see how that will work. For me, that says if it doesn't resolve, if more issues come to pass and the traditional ocean routes capacity gets more limited as the year goes on, particularly into more of the peak in the summer, we will have to plan for a bigger hit towards the end of the year, because at that point there won't be time to plan it out or wait and see. That's when we might see more volume shift our way. So we're starting to look ahead and I guess cautiously plan for potential lifts around peak season. But we've got to be careful because adding aviation capacity is expensive. And if there isn't volume for it, it doesn't make sense for us to have empty aircraft. So we probably look at that closer to the end of summer and into September, where we can still plan accordingly and meet that November, December, January rush.
When you look at the traditional peak season, are there any indicators that you are going to look for to see what your peak season will be? What are the things that you look for? Is the volume? What exactly?
It is really about volume. And for me, it will be being very close to some of our larger companies that are in normal sectors like automotive, engineering and manufacturing, life sciences, technology, and starting to get their demand forecast. By then, they will know better what their orders look like. And we work closely, and they will know if any impact maybe their air and ocean peak will have had on them, and we'll plan our capacity accordingly. We will also plan for a continued growth in e-commerce that has proven year in and year out to continue to fuel. And with no signs of the US dollar weakening, I expect it to remain strong. We know that consumers here in the US will continue to buy, and we need to be able to help bring that product in for them for the holiday season.